My family lives here. You guys need to leave. Amidst the in-laws directing the movers, Kevin pointed at us and loudly declared. His face twisted with malice. I couldn't help but show my disgust. But Madison, standing beside me, seemed different, asking Kevin with a shaken voice, "Dad, don't you know?" With those words, Kevin looked puzzled. Madison's frantic demeanor not only caught Kevin off guard, but also made mother-in-law Emily and father-in-law David stop in their tracks to look at us. But Hannah, uninterested as ever, continued giving orders to the movers. Amidst this bewildering scene with the in-laws, I decided to reveal a certain truth. My name is Aria, a 46-year-old remote worker. I have a husband and daughter and live a decent life. I met Kevin, my husband, back when I was still working in an office. We hit it off at a company party that was popular at the time and exchanged contact details, eventually starting to date. After several dates, Kevin proposed to me 3 years into our relationship. With my often sick mom in mind, I wanted to marry soon to give her peace of mind, so I accepted Kevin's proposal. Sometime after our marriage, I found out I was pregnant. Kevin was genuinely overjoyed, eagerly looking forward to seeing our child. When our daughter Madison was born, Kevin actively took part in parenting, and I was living happily. But like anyone, I had my share of worries, mainly about my mom. My sickly mom was thrilled to see her granddaughter, visiting us frequently despite her near-bedridden state. Initially, she visited often, but as Madison entered middle school, Mom's health visibly worsened. After being married for a while, I left my job to switch to remote work, ready to care for my mom whenever needed. This shift allowed me to fully care for Mom, who started to frequently be in and out of the hospital as Madison graduated middle school. Mom was always so happy when my daughter and I visited her. I hoped these good deeds would accumulate, allowing her to recover enough to go out again. But around this time, Kevin's behavior began to change. Initially, he willingly let me care for Mom, but recently, he started getting grumpy, complaining that I wasn't taking care of him. "Going to see your mom again? Huh. You don't care for me, tired from work, but you dote on your sickly mom. Man, I wish I were sick too." No matter how Madison and I tried to cheer him up, Kevin stubbornly refused. Torn between worrying about Mom and Kevin, Madison stepped in to help with Kevin. "Mom, I'll take care of Dad. You go see Grandma quickly," she said, smiling reassuringly. I always end up relying on Madison's words. One day, amidst this routine, I received a call from my sister-in-law, Hannah. "You've been neglecting your brother lately," she accused as soon as I answered. Startled, I glanced at my phone screen, but it definitely showed Hannah's name. Confused by the baseless accusation, all I could do was deny it. "Long time no speak, Hannah. What's this all about? I'm not neglecting Kevin at all." Unaware of how things had gotten to this point, Hannah pressed on. "Don't play dumb. I've heard it from my brother. You've been focusing on your mom recently, neglecting your household. Can you still say you're a proud wife?" Indeed, I had been spending more time caring for my increasingly ill mom, but I never expected Kevin to complain about it to Hannah. But it's not like I've been neglecting our home. Madison helps with chores after school, and I balance work and caring for Mom with household duties. True, Kevin's complaints seemed to have increased recently, but they were about trivial things like wanting a fancy steak or disliking the scent of the laundry detergent, things beyond our control and hard to improve. I'm certainly not slacking off with the housework. Before I could explain in detail to Hannah, she dropped a bombshell. "Unfortunately, this has reached Mom and the others. They might come to scold you soon." Leaving me with these unreasonable words, Hannah abruptly ended the call. Stunned and speechless, Madison approached me. "Mom, I'm home. What happened? You look so shocked." Snapping back to reality, I shared the recent events with Madison, who had just returned from school. Madison, like me, was dumbfounded, opening her mouth in disbelief before shaking her head and sighing. Hey, Mom, there's something I've been thinking about for a while. Can I talk to you? Suddenly serious, Madison spoke, and I nodded anxiously. As I listened to her, I felt a sense of patheticness. During this time, with Kevin's nonsensical complaints and harassing calls from Hannah ongoing, the in-laws finally took action. One day, after visiting Mom, I returned home to find Emily cooking in the kitchen. Entering the living room, I stood frozen, gaping at Emily, my belongings still in hand. Noticing me, Emily frowned and approached briskly. Oh, just got back. How is Mom? Well, never mind. Sit down here. Annoyed, Emily passed by, leaving me no choice but to follow, still grasping the situation. Sitting on our living room sofa, I endured a lengthy lecture from Emily. It started with accusations of my poor attitude towards Kevin, moving to neglecting housework and letting my husband do chores, criticizing me thoroughly. However, realizing some inconsistencies, I interrupted to correct her. Emily, there are some things I need to correct. I never made Kevin do the housework. In fact, he doesn't help at all. Embarrassingly, it's Madison who assists me. Hearing this, Emily stood up abruptly, pointing and shouting at me. You think I believe such lies? You're suggesting my son is lying. How shameless! Enough of this! Fuming, Emily left the house like a storm, leaving the stove on. I rushed to turn it off and couldn't follow her. That day, Kevin was unusually cheerful, eerily generous. He kept interrupting me every time I tried to bring up Emily's visit. But even Madison found it odd, so we decided to quietly observe, not to upset Kevin. For a few days, Kevin remained in good spirits. Thanks to this, I could care for my mom without worry. But despite my care, Mom quietly passed away. Madison and I, grieving, managed to finish the funeral and decided to clean up Mom's house. I wanted Kevin's help, but mentioning it turned him sour for the first time in a while. Madison and I ended up cleaning alone, surrounded by memories of Mom, each item bringing back memories, hindering our progress. Reluctantly, I contacted Kevin, and we stayed at Mom's house that night. Kevin seemed to be in a really good mood. Take your time. It's a good opportunity, Kevin said. But due to Madison's school and my work, we couldn't stay long. We planned to return home the next day and decided to rest for the night. The next day, having managed to sort through most of the stuff, we decided to head back home. As we neared our house, I noticed a large truck parked outside. Wondering what it was, we saw it was a moving truck, and Kevin and Emily were directing the unloading. What's going on? I asked, rushing over with Madison. Kevin stepped forward, puffing out his chest. You're back already. It's too late for that now. What? I was stunned, watching our belongings being moved into the house, while Kevin, arms crossed and smug, continued. My family is moving in. You guys need to leave. As the in-laws directed the movers, Kevin pointed at us and loudly declared. His face twisted with malice, and I couldn't help but show my disgust. However, Madison, standing beside me, seemed different and asked Kevin, puzzled. Dad, don't you know? His expression changed to shock. Madison's frantic demeanor not only caught Kevin off guard, but also made Emily and David stop and look at us. However, Hannah continued giving orders to the movers, seemingly uninterested. Amidst this bewildering scene with the in-laws, I decided to reveal a certain truth. Forgot? This house is mine. The in-laws were shocked, and Kevin suddenly turned pale and panicky. Even Hannah stopped directing the movers and confronted me. What are you talking about? You couldn't possibly afford such a fancy house. I proudly replied, Thank you for the compliment. This house belongs to my family. My dad built it. That's impossible. This house looks too new and beautiful. I appreciate it, Emily. My mom renovated it when we got married. Kevin should know about this. I didn't know why they had forgotten, but the house was in my name, and the renovation costs were covered by Mom. She willingly moved out to an apartment so that we could live here long term. Kevin and I thanked her and even discussed living together. Realizing his plan had fallen apart, forgetful Kevin seemed to understand that his scheme had failed. And you know, I started to speak, but Madison interrupted. She began to share information from the recent inheritance sorting. Grandma left a lot of inheritance for Mom and me. Unfortunately, it's not money. It's land and high-rise apartments, things that can't be easily converted into cash. Upon hearing this, Kevin's eyes lit up, and he turned to the in-laws while Hannah triumphantly fist-pumped. I wondered how they could be so happy, hearing Madison's words, but Kevin quickly turned to me, shouting, Wait a minute, I didn't know Mom had so much wealth. You didn't say anything about this when we got married. Hearing Kevin's outcry, the in-laws started voicing their selfish complaints. What's this? Isn't that like marriage fraud? That's so sleazy. You deliberately kept quiet about the inheritance to keep it from Kevin, didn't you? Such a greedy woman. And the way you spoke earlier, it sounded like only you two are getting the inheritance. David, realizing the crucial point, looked at us for confirmation. I nodded firmly and explained. Yes, the inheritance is just for me and Madison. Kevin gets nothing. We found the will while sorting through the belongings yesterday. Hearing this, the in-laws turned red with rage, especially Emily, who was the most furious. This is unacceptable. If that's the case, we're getting a divorce. I'm going to take every penny of your divorce settlement. Emily, stopping her feet and raising her voice, received an immediate acceptance from me. That sounds good. I agree. As soon as I consented, Emily turned and ran off, presumably to the nearby office to get divorce papers. I watched her rush off without trying to stop her. Kevin, noticing Emily's departure, asked me bitterly, What are you planning to do now? What do you mean? Are you talking about the divorce or where you're going to live? Both. Kevin responded with almost a snarl, but I looked up at the house, feigning disinterest. What if I told you I've already put this house up for sale? What? Now it was Kevin's turn to be stunned. He exchanged glances with David, then looked back at me, confused. It was expected. They wouldn't have thought that I'd sell the house while spending another night at Mom's. Addressing the bewildered Kevin, I spoke up confidently. I've been thinking about it for a while. Every time I see your terrible attitude, I wonder why I'm still married to you. I've been putting up with it for Madison's sake, but she's also fed up with you. Delivering this shocking truth to Kevin, I saw him turn pale and look at Madison. She met his gaze firmly and spoke her mind. Dad, you always said you were the head of this house. Neglected and pitied. Tired from work and ignored. But don't you think the reason you're treated like that is because of your own faults? Why don't you realize you're the one neglecting and ignoring us? Madison's sharp words silenced Kevin, who could do nothing but stay quiet. I thought if he just signed the divorce papers in his downtrodden state, that would be enough. But then Hannah revealed something astonishing. If I knew it would come to this, I wouldn't have applied for the renovation. We all turned to Hannah in surprise. I was shocked not only by Hannah's sudden confession, but also that David and Kevin didn't know about it. What are you doing without permission? David shouted at Hannah, who nonchalantly began to make excuses. I wanted to live in my dream room, so when we were taking over this house, I thought, why not renovate it? But you're selling this house, right? Oh, but if you're selling it, wouldn't it be better if it's renovated? Hannah's smug face made me and Madison sigh. As for Kevin and David, they were too appalled by Hannah's recklessness. Kevin, unable to contain his anger any longer, began shouting at her.
Listen, sister, whether it's sold or becomes ours, you should have told us beforehand. We were planning to move in. Where are we supposed to live during the renovation?
Despite feeling a bit off about his preface, Kevin's point was valid, and even Hannah seemed to realize it. Oh, really? As Kevin was about to yell at Hannah again, we saw someone running towards us from afar. It was Emily, seemingly with the divorce papers.
I got them, the divorce papers. Now sign them right here.
Emily, out of breath and unaware of the commotion among the in-laws, pushed the papers towards me. I took the papers from Emily and thrust them at Kevin. You start writing. You've always made fun of me, and you agree with the divorce, right?
No way.
Kevin's instant refusal was probably because he knew about Mom's inheritance. But I couldn't bear Kevin's actions and the in-laws' nonsensical behavior any longer. I provoked Kevin, hoping to get him to fill out the papers on the spot. Changing your mind so suddenly? That's right. You've been in a good mood recently because you plan to take over my house. Too bad. Even without Mom's inheritance, I have no intention of giving you this house, and it's already up for sale. Either way, you're going to be homeless, right? Kevin looked at the divorce papers with a frustrated face. Trying to hold back from filling them out in anger, I knew exactly how to push his buttons. It might be humiliating for you, but if you sign these papers, it might ease some of my frustration. Thinking Kevin would act as I expected if I asserted dominance, I spoke, filled with my true feelings, and sure enough, Kevin, red with anger, snatched the papers from me and began filling them out on the spot.
If you say so, I'll give you your divorce.
Kevin's impulsive action was a relief to me internally. I thought Kevin might come to his senses, but he remained simple-minded. After receiving the half-completed divorce application from him, I filled in my part, ensuring no further unexpected events would occur. I handed the completed application to Madison and turned back to the in-laws. Now, all that's left is to submit this to the city hall, so take everything you brought into this house and go.
Wait a minute, are you serious? You said you'd feel better if Kevin signed the divorce papers.
Indeed, I did say that, but I never agreed to the move-in.
What about the renovation? Renovation? What are you talking about?
Emily was surprised to hear about the renovation plan revealed in her absence, but after being briefed by David, she confronted Hannah. A brawl ensued, and with David and Kevin preoccupied, I tried to leave with Madison. However, Kevin and Hannah, determined not to let us go, were stopped by the moving crew, who had had enough. Amid the commotion, we heard police sirens. Shielded by the movers, I noticed neighbors had gathered, likely alarmed by the noise, and someone had called the police. The sight of the approaching patrol car with its flashing lights was a relief, but that was short-lived, as the in-laws, now all together, turned on Madison and me. Thankfully, the police intervened, just in time to prevent any harm. Despite the police's attempt to calm the situation, the in-laws continued their uproar, leading the officers to call for backup and place us in the patrol car for safety. Seeing us in the car, Hannah mistakenly thought we were being arrested and tried to throw belongings into the house, only to be stopped by the police. Finally, with additional officers arriving, the commotion ceased. As the in-laws began to calm down, the police asked us to come to the station for questioning, igniting another uproar. Kevin or Hannah, or perhaps both, ended up assaulting an officer, resulting in their immediate arrest for obstructing official duties. After being advised by the police, the rest of the in-laws also headed to the station. Meanwhile, Madison and I underwent a brief questioning in the patrol car. Eventually, Kevin and I officially divorced. Although he initially resisted despite having signed the divorce papers, leading to delays, we managed to finalize the divorce with the help of lawyers. Soon after, we found a buyer for the house, and I was able to secure the sale proceeds. Though Hannah had strongly suggested renovations, they were unnecessary, as the house had already been renovated when Mom passed it to me, leading to a quick sale. Since then, the in-laws were acquitted, but obviously they couldn't return to the inherited house. Having sold their own home in anticipation of moving into mine, they found themselves without a place to live. Moreover, the uproar caused them to be looked down upon by their community, making their situation even more difficult. It was inevitable, given the scale of the disturbance. My filing for a bond in the divorce trial has further cornered the in-laws. Kevin's workplace became aware of the commotion, and after receiving a pay cut, he voluntarily resigned. Now, while working at his current job, he is paying the bond for our divorce trial, and although for a short period, child support for Madison. Naturally, balancing income and expenses has become difficult, and he seems to be managing the payments by juggling multiple jobs. Hannah, initially continuing as a beauty consultant, was eventually fired due to customer rumors about the incident reaching upper management. Living a lavish lifestyle, she quickly ran out of money, and like Kevin, is working multiple jobs to cover the bond payment. The in-laws themselves seem to have had further troubles post-incident, leading to a divorce and separate living arrangements. Emily was fired from her part-time job due to neighborhood gossip, and David, who planned to live freely off his retirement fund, now has to find work to cover the bond payment to me. While each of them faces their own challenges, I see it as their retribution for their actions towards Madison and me. I hope they will reflect on their behavior. Meanwhile, Madison and I have moved into a new home. With her already transferred to a different school, there's no worry about the in-laws causing trouble there. Continuing my remote work, I look forward to spending peaceful times with Madison. The relief of being freed from that situation brings a smile to my face, and I plan to live happily with Madison.